Welcome to Wealth Beyond the White Coat, a show where we dive deep into the world of financial freedom for dentists and medical professionals. I'm your host, Darren Flesher, a dentist with a passion for uncovering the strategies that lead to a prosperous life beyond the office. Every episode will explore the avenues of alternative investing, tax mitigation, and secrets to build wealth that the textbooks don't teach you. Whether you're looking to enhance your financial literacy, discover new investment opportunities, or simply find a better way to manage your money, this is the place where your financial health is the core of our conversations. Welcome to Wealth Beyond the White Coat, where your journey to financial clarity and freedom begins. All right, welcome to the final part of our series on due diligence with David Sangstock of Mick Law. In this episode, we conclude our insightful conversations about vetting sponsors, which is arguably one of the most crucial steps in the investment process. We'll wrap up our dialogue with David's expert advice on assessing the credibility and reliability of those who manage your investments. So while this marks the end of our discussion on sponsors, stay tuned in the future for episodes where we'll dive into how to vet the deals themselves. Tell me if I heard you correctly. So some of these people might be self-selecting. They know that they might be coming in with some bad news. And so the fact that they don't have your opinion might tell some of the story in why they didn't go seek that opinion. We're not saying that everybody that doesn't have a third-party opinion is necessarily bad, but that could be some of the reason why that doesn't end up happening, because they know that they're going to get news they don't want to hear.
Yeah, it really is. And they know people talk in the industry, and they know that if you have certain things in your background or your performance has been subpar, probably don't go to Mick Law, because you're probably going to come back with something that that's going to get in front of broker dealers, investment advisors, and they're going to read it and be like, there's probably better opportunities out there, so I'm going to pass on this. There might be other groups that do somewhat similar due diligence that may not really disclose it the same way, and it may give them an opportunity to go with that type of group and not have that negative stuff show up, at least not as at the forefront of the review.
There's a cost, Darren. There's a cost to go. Some people don't go on the DD route because they don't want to spend the money, or they can't afford to spend the money. Like David, big sponsor comes in of whatever, first time in their ecosystem. What's it going to cost, and how long is it going to take for them to get through your ecosystem?
Yeah, it depends on the type of offering, obviously. It's nothing's ever tied into the amount of equity they raise. We don't do that. We don't charge more because they're raising, 500 million versus 100 million. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is go through the documents and come to a conclusion that we think is going to be beneficial for our clients. Obviously, a DST's Delaware Statutory Trust 1031 product with one asset is going to cost less than a real estate fund that has 12 assets currently in it that all need to be looked at and determine whether or not they fit the investment profile of that fund to make sure that they're doing what they said they're going to do. So there's a range of it, but anywhere from 16 to 35,000 it might cost. It is. It's a cost, but it's
if you're a small operator and you're not well capitalized, you can't afford that, and you just go out and do your own thing.
Yeah, you really, yeah, and that is true, because you can do a line item in your offering memorandum for due diligence expenses. Then ultimately the investor is covering that cost. You can do that, but usually an upfront cost at the sponsor signs an engagement with us that says, we don't represent you, we're adverse to you, but for purposes of trying to create relationships and establish them with investment advisors and broker dealers, et cetera. And this is the process that you need to go through. So they will sign an engagement. They will pay us, and that money will come in before anything even gets started, so that we're not beholden to getting paid before we give our opinion, right? That's a big no. We got to make sure that we've got everything collected, so that if we come up with something that's negative, you don't have a sponsor saying, well, we're not paying. We collect that money and we go through that process, which on a one property DST 1031 structured offering might be 7 business days, maybe 10 business days if it's a brand new sponsor. For a sponsor opinion, might take 30 days. Fund normally about the same, 30 days. And normally that's never on us. It's normally you've got a checklist of items you need from the sponsor, and you get half of them, and then they go radio silent for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden give you a few more items, and then after another week give you a few more items. So it's hard to put together an opinion in 30 days when you don't get your documents all at one time. If they provide us a portal that has everything we're requesting, yeah, it's no more than 30 days to get an opinion done at that point. We're always trying to make sure that we're not the one holding up the process. This as efficient we can be, we will be. And that's a lot of times based on information gathering.
I'd say transparency from sponsors is something they ask them in the process. Have you ever had a bankruptcy? Have you ever tell us the things, disclose those things if you've ever done it? And if somebody doesn't say it, tell them and then when they do the actual background check, it comes up, right? They're like, man, that was 20 years ago. They could have disclosed whatever it was. They probably learned some lessons from it, but they didn't disclose it. And now we have concerns about, are they going to be forthright? If they can be honest, they can tell the truth, right? So those are reasons that people can fail a sponsor opinion just because they're not just transparent. We've all done things before in the past that we're not so proud of sometimes, right? Maybe doesn't it, but being able to come clean and say, here's what happened, here's what I did. I've definitely seen deals pulled for those reasons.
Yeah, Matt, talk about that specific scenario where the guy filed bankruptcy decades ago, but wasn't truthful about it.
Hey, I just wanted to interrupt the show real quick and tell you about an exclusive member discount for Legacy Point group members. The company is called Gelt, and they're both tax planning and tax preparation. We connected because their CEO actually comes from a family of physicians, and he understands the financial complexities that healthcare professionals face these days. Legacy Point is honored to partner with Gelt because it's our shared mission to empower successful professionals with optimal tax and financial outcomes. For your 20% discount off financial planning and tax preparation and priority access with their onboarding, become a member over at legacypointgroup.com.
I'm sure David's got a ton of stories like that.
So let me just set it up. So Matt told me a story how a sponsor had filed bankruptcy literally 20 or 30 years ago, but they weren't upfront about that. And it came up in a background check. One could argue if you filed bankruptcy 20 or 30 years ago, you probably learned something and you're in a better place today because of it. But the bigger issue is it's a character issue that they didn't disclose that. So because of that, the deal got, for lack of a better term, killed because of that situation. So talk about something like that, David.
Yeah, so we send out a director, an officer questionnaire that goes out. So it's basically anyone that owns 5% or more or involved in the day-to-day operations of the company, decision-making, anyone fills it out that meets that. And that's almost 100% of the time, you know who those people are based upon getting the operating agreement and their titles and everything else, or their position there. You're expecting to get a questionnaire from them. And the whole point is to put everything on there, anything that they think. And I'll get calls to be like, hey, this happened. Should I put it on? I'm like, yeah, put it on. To make a decision whether or not it's something that ultimately needs to make its way into the final opinion that goes out, depending on what we think is important for our clients. But I disclose it, yes. So a lot, you get those calls, it's pretty good because you know that gosh, it's been so long ago, but is this something you still want us to put in? I just say, put it all in. So yeah, it is. It's a character thing. It's no different than when you do these applications for law school or medical school and everything else, and they want to know anything that happened, including anything over a speeding ticket. And sometimes people think, yeah, but that happened when I was 18 and they basically closed it off. So it's really not public record right now. So no, they're not going to find out. So I'm not going to put it on my application. You can still find the information. And then when that happens, you're like, the first thing that's going to happen is the law school or the medical schools could disqualify you right there. They can disqualify you for not putting it in there. And you're like, geez, if I would have known that, I would have done it. Just put it in there. So vast majority of them are candid and give all the information. If they don't put something and we find it, yeah, it does go to the credibility of them. And normally it's stated that they filled out a questionnaire, failed to disclose it. We found it. Then the person came back and described the situation and gave us some information, but it's going to make it in there that they didn't disclose it because I think it's important.
I would agree. Share the information and let people sort it out and determine what they think is relevant or not relevant.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough one though, Matt. Like I said about something that happened a long time ago, and it's just sometimes it's really hard to figure out what you want to put in the opinion. A lot of times more is better because then I let our client make the decision. But some of the stuff is just you hate to really hold someone to the feet to the fire on something that happened when they're in college or something. Everyone makes mistakes, and you don't want to have that be something that grounds them, given that it's unrelated to what they're doing now in their business and everything that they've done over the years. And haven't really had any hiccups in 30 years. You got to look past some of that. Otherwise, I think you're putting someone's livelihood at issue too. So there is a balancing.
For sure. But that's disclosing it to you, right? Like
Yeah.
they can disclose it to you. It doesn't have to make it into the final report and be disseminated to everybody, but it just shows a level of transparency between you guys of saying, hey, okay, they're being forthright. They're talking to us about all this stuff. Hey, if they got arrested for streaking through the quad back in college, I want to hear the story, right? Like it's probably a good story, but that may not hold it against the real estate development program they're working on today.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to touch on from a sponsor level here, Matt? I want to make sure we cover everything on the due diligence of the sponsor themselves before we dive into the deal level stuff.
The reason I think that sponsor level stuff is extremely important because we have a little saying in the industry that you bet on the jockey, not the horse, right? And the jockey's the sponsor and the horse is the deal. And the reason that people say that is, look, if the deal works out perfectly and it's a great deal, nobody really cares many times what the sponsor ends up doing. But if a deal goes sideways, like the quality of the human capital that's involved in the transaction and how they'll step up to try to protect investors or do the right thing, the experience to do it, to know how to do it, to work out a bad deal is extremely important. And that's something that you look for. So that's why knowing who you're getting into business with, knowing they have the experience, knowing they have the track record, and they're going to be forthright and honest with the way they're doing things is extremely important. So that's why I think it's a great foundational piece to understand the human capital that you're going to do business with. And then the next piece, like you said, the pivot to the deal would be, do we understand the deal? Does it make sense? Is it something consistent with what they've done before in the past? Do we think they have the experience to execute? Is it the right time in the market for whatever that particular opportunity is? And how do they have a competitive advantage? How are those people going to execute that strategy or that business plan?
Financial freedom is about making the right moves at the right time. As practice owners, we often reach a point where growth stalls. Instead of maintaining at that plateau, consider cashing in now, putting that money to work for you, letting it double, triple, or even more over the course of your career, and then go pursue more of what you love to do. This is exactly what I did with my friend JW, a dental practice broker who found the perfect partner for my practice, maximized its value, and optimized the deal terms. He offers a free valuation for those considering a sale. If you want an introduction and the same red carpet treatment shown to me by my friend JW, email me at darren@legacypointgroup.com. That's DEREN @legacypointgroup.com. And I'll be happy to connect you with JW to start your journey to financial independence.
So Matt, I don't know if this is the right time for this, but you told me a story about some due diligence that you did on a deal in California where they were allegedly buying real estate and then and doing some things. And you actually went down the road of checking the the property appraiser's website in California. So tell a little bit about that story.
That deal did not go through the broker dealer investment advisor network. That deal was being distributed by a non-registered network. So it didn't have an independent third-party firm on it, but supposedly they were flipping houses in California was the strategy. And I knew it had no due diligence on it whatsoever. And I do have a real estate background. So the average person, I don't know how they would look at a real estate deal if they don't know anything about real estate, but they're like, yeah, we take this money, we go and we flip houses, then we split the profit with people. I was like, okay. So they gave me some examples of things that they had done. And I said, how do I know that you guys own these houses, or how do you own these assets? How do you protect them? So I called the clerk of courts because there's title, or there would have been liens that would have been posted against the stuff, and they were no records of any of the transactions they had done, none on any of the properties that they had listed that they had given me addresses on in their examples and their pitch decks or whatever. And so I called them back and I literally said, hey, I was checking up, verifying the information. And the guy on the other end responded to me and said, oh yeah, we're so good at what we do and so efficient that we get in and out of our transactions so fast that sometimes the public record doesn't even have time to record the transactions. That's laughable if you understand how that works.
So Matt, tell one more, because The one you're going to tell now speaks to some of the things in the direct to retail ecosystem now. It was solar powered things on cell towers. I think it was. You told me the story. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Where they ended up it became a Ponzi scheme. It started out real and they got too much capital and became a Ponzi scheme.
That was a real deal. There was a lot of banks that got defrauded out of that one. What happened was they were building these backup solar trailers that it was a trailer technology that had a solar power thing on it that they would plug up next to cell phone towers as backup power generation. And it caught on so big that they got so much demand for the product that they couldn't manufacture the products fast enough to keep up with demand. And instead of saying, oh, we can't take any more orders or we're in a backlog for multiple years, they would take the trailers and drive them around to different locations and change serial numbers on the few trailers they had and take photographs. David's seen this kind of stuff before. He knows what I'm talking about. They would take photographs of the trailer with different serial numbers on them, showing they were in different locations so that they could, get payment for the purchase orders or whatever had been done. And and David, speak to this a little bit. How many times do you see a good sponsor get into a deal and get more access to capital than they've ever had before because they execute with, let's just say, tens of millions of dollars? And then they think, if I can do this with tens of millions, I can do this with hundreds of millions or billions. And then the system breaks down and they can't execute. And then it becomes a Ponzi scheme because they can't execute. They take too much investor capital. They start just returning investor capital back to people like it's a distribution from something that doesn't happen. How prevalent is that when somebody gets too big too fast and doesn't have the controls in place to be able to manage it?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest red flags, I guess we'll call it that, is sponsors who are raising capital too fast. Their money raising wholesaling division is too good at what they're doing, and they're raising too much capital. And it could be because of the fee structure for to the rep, whatever it might be. It's flowing in too fast, and they can't deploy it. And if they can't deploy it, they deploy it in assets that are lesser than what they would normally invest in because they need to deploy it. And so it becomes a cycle of, if we don't deploy this and get in, then everyone's going to see that we're not able to deploy it. So therefore the money's going to slow down. So it just keeps cycling through like this, where you can look at 3 or 4 of the largest, very large groups that are now no longer in the private placement business. And I bet you all those groups raise capital too efficiently, to the point where how are they able to raise this capital so fast? And how do we know they can even deploy it in a manner that's acceptable or meet the expectations of what was put in their business plan? It's almost a red flag. Another big one, and it's just something we look at too, is boats and planes, right? Large yachts and very nice private jets are always something to be at least consider when you're looking at these sponsors. Sometimes it might make sense to have a plane if you're investing in tertiary markets and you need to get to these properties and look at them, and you're like, that makes sense. But just from a starting point, it's a comfort level you feel, Matt, as you mentioned earlier. If you almost get an initial instinct talking to a group or some of the people making decisions, and after that conversation whether or not you trust them or whether or not you feel that this is a group you'd want to do business with. And it doesn't mean you're 100% right, but intuition is important. And if you just don't feel like it's someone that you want to do business with, you're probably better off not doing business with them, because they might try to make you change your mind, but ultimately it's important. It is. That's why you have friends. You have certain people that you like and certain people you don't like. It's just your intuition on it. It doesn't fit who you are. And if they don't fit who you are, then I wouldn't invest in them.
Yeah.
So go ahead. You're Darren.
I was going to say that even applies down at the dental practice level. I mean, sometimes I've got a very specific checklist or questions I need answered. And sometimes it's just, let me take you to lunch and see how you behave in public and see what comes up organically. I know Matt's told a story before about going to dinner with people who were fundraising and they were spending the money that wasn't theirs on lavish dinners. And you just get a feel for who people are and how they operate. And like you said, if they got a big overhead, a big personal overhead, there's just temptation. There's potential for mismanagement and misappropriation of funds. If they're just not behaving in public, you get a feel for their character. So there's lots of little nuance and details that come up that aren't necessarily part of the specificity of what you're looking for in your checklist, but you just get to know who they are. And it's just, the more interactions you have with people, the more they're going to reveal kind of their character and how they operate as an individual that you can translate in how they might operate their business as well, I would think.
100% right there. It really is. It's okay to go out to dinner, but you don't have to be. They know, certain of these groups that do that know that they are going to get a certain percentage of the people out that they go to dinner with, or that they're doing the lavish dining with, that will sign selling groups, or they will put their product on their platform based on that. And they know they don't have to get everyone. They just need to get the ones that are willing to do that. And it's just a troll. It's just because something doesn't feel good doesn't mean it's going to end up working in the wrong direction. It just means that if it doesn't feel good, it doesn't seem right, take that to heart when you make decisions on investment. You don't have to be in this industry for 50 years to get that intuition. It just, if you don't feel right, just don't do it. There's plenty of other groups out there you'll feel better about.
And that wraps up our 3-part series on vetting sponsors with David Singstock of Mick Law. We covered a lot of ground on the importance of thoroughly assessing who you're entrusting with your investments. And although we concluded our conversation on sponsors for now, don't worry, there's more to come. In future episodes, we'll shift our focus to vetting the deals themselves. So thanks for joining us on this journey to being smarter and more secure in your investing. Stay tuned for more insights and strategies, and we'll be back in the near future with David Singstock. But that's it for now. Thanks for listening in to Wealth Beyond the White Coat. Your time and attention mean a lot to us. If you found value in today's episode, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform and share it with your colleagues and friends. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more professionals like you striving for financial freedom. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of your financial health. Thank you for joining us on this journey to wealth beyond the white coat.